calling my mom and saying, this is not doable. Like, what am I going to do? And understanding the DNA of a bean, a coffee bean, and understanding our DNA. And then understanding how they would work copacetically together because we drink coffee every day and we deserve to have really good coffee. And I'm not devoted my life to trying to do the right thing. And your job is to protect those weaker than you or that need help.
Do you remember what first inspired you? So
Yeah.
motherhood, basically.
Yeah, it did. And I have to say, I grew up in a home that everybody loved coffee but me. And I remember when I had, this is so funny, I had my my first child, and I remember thinking, how do all these mothers stay awake? And I worked back then too, and it was a lot, working and taking care. And I was delusional because I thought I'm going to have my son. I had him on a Wednesday, and I was finishing a PhD program and work, and I thought I'll go back to work on Monday. Because when you've never had a child, you don't know. And I remember the Monday getting up and calling my mom and saying, this is not doable. Like, what am I going to do? And I had a job where they let me take him to work, but still, it was a lot. And my mom was like, you're going to have to drink coffee. So I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so I started drinking coffee. My parents loved it growing up. They would offer us coffee with cream and sugar when we were little. I grew up on a farm and it was, they would offer it and I'd be like, no, I don't like it. I was the only one in my family that didn't like it, but I learned to love it after I had a child. And then I had, three more. So, but I love the taste of it. I also, as a scientist, I had a pituitary tumor and different types of cancer. And when I started researching, you can't ever claim that a natural substance cures anything. But I did know there were certain types of coffee and coffee beans that caused cancer cell death, apoptosis. And so it was one of the things that I added to my regimen what happened was the cancer metastasized and I was trying to eat everything from spirulina to coffee to resveratrol. I did give up alcohol for a while, and then I remember someone saying, well, one glass of alcohol is good because of the resveratrol. And I'm like, okay, I can add that back to my regimen. but, but like, I learned to love it. But then the more I researched it, the more I understood that it had mold and mycotoxins and it had all kinds of things. So even though the pure bean could help from a physical perspective and from a healthcare perspective, because of the pesticides and GMOs and the land, air, and water that we have. And I hate even bringing up the topic because people are like, the environment's not that bad. I'm like, but it is. But the problem is, regardless of your political stance, our environment is not healthy like it used to be because we've had much pollution, right? And nuclear war. And when a nuclear war happens, for example, it does not leave the stratosphere, it disseminates across our world. And so a lot of our things that plants and herbs and roots and seeds, you have to be very careful where you get it. And then most of my career, I focused a lot on detoxification and really helping clean out the environment, people, even vitamins and minerals and seeds and plants. Like the things I've worked on, I try to explain this to people. You can go to the store and you can buy coffee or you can buy vitamins and they can have heavy metals and lead and mercury and horrible things in it. And I don't want to scare people. So instead, what I do is I've worked on creating some things that hopefully will help people, feel, look, and be better because we just all need to be as great as we can be. And there's no easy, like one pill solution, right? So coffee was definitely something for me that people drink every day. And if they're going to drink it, I'm hoping they drink something that's, free of mycotoxins, that has a good pH level, that is fair trade, I had a whole list of things that were so important to me. And so I think when Rom Roast launched, it was, and by the way, I did not come up with that name. The marketing department was like, we're going to call it Rom Roast. But I was very happy because, you know, we ended up getting a 91% cup score. We worked really hard for that. Only 1% of the coffee in the world has a score that high. But I think what was more important than a score, it's kind of like an award. You know, when you, my mom used to say, if you win homecoming queen or you win president or whatever, it doesn't matter. What's that going to do for you? But, and so the 91% cup score is great, but what it really mattered to me was that the coffee did not have toxins and the coffee did not have heavy metals and it hadn't been exposed to GMOs or pesticides. It was so important because if my name was going to be on it, it better be something that's really helping people and making their life better. You know, that was important to me.
Two words you said a second ago that let's connect them is obviously coffee and detoxification. Now, my simplistic view is that's part of the process of how you're making your coffee. So, can we talk about the process behind Rom Roast and how you went from idea to beans in a bag and what that process looks like for Rom Roast?
So I went all over, like I even went to Ethiopia because Ethiopia has great coffee. I went all over and would meet with different coffee plantations and different owners trying to find a really good place. We ended up being able to find a place in Guatemala that was on top of a mountain which had never been exposed to GMOs and pesticides. The water's clean, the air's clean. It was a very isolated place, and we decided we wanted to really partner with a business that was small, that's all they cared about is making something that was just really unique and special and not worried because a lot of your coffee beans where you get them, they're worried about mass production. They're worried about making sure that it tastes good, which taste was important to us, but the biggest issue was let's make sure that everything, the fair trade, the organic, the vegan, we wanted everything. And I wanted to be sustainable. And for me, I'm just going to say this, sustainable is not enough for me. I always say we need to remediate things because to be sustainable, it's not completely accurate, right? And the word, and I'm so weird. I'm a word person. I'm like, I don't know if that's like the right word, even though we use it in our marketing and we use it in what we say. I'm really big, like I have a lot of patents based on remediation of things and making sure that you're not just detoxing, but you're helping the plants and you're helping everything basically grow because you know we should have this much topsoil and now we have this much topsoil and there's not nutrients in it, like we don't have all the things that help the plants and the roots and the seeds, they're just not the same. So we explored all of that, and then I came up with the process to clean the beans and detox the beans of any kind of mycotoxins, mold, fungus, bacteria, viruses, anything surrounding it. I developed that in 2015. I basically wrote a series of patents that had to do with getting rid of nuclear waste in the land, air, and water, regeneration of land, air, and water in the human body, and also reversal of aging. And I was the inventor in that, but it was assigned to another group. So I went back and I wrote more patents on how I would do that differently. It's kind of like what you do for a living. Every day we learn something new, right? Like, and we hope what we've done is the best, but the truth is it's the best at that time and we can keep getting better. It's our arrogance that says we can't keep getting better, right? Because when you put your name around something, and I even struggle with this, it's like I made this, it took me so long, it took me 7 years to make, and I'm not going to change it because it was perfect. But what I've learned as a scientist and as a human being is to admit failure every day and then to admit that I'm going to try to be better every day. And that's what happened with the coffee. I didn't, at first, it was a one-step process that involved basically a 4-day process to make the cleaning. And it's made from basically a zeolite silica, trace mineral, vitamin mixture, which goes in and cleans the beans. And I think that's the reason our cup score is so high, because the pH level, basically getting rid of all those minor toxins, getting rid of all the things in the beans that are harmful or could be harmful, creates a pH level that is very conducive to our body. And I don't know if you know this, but our earth is composed of silica and water, right? And as humans, we are too. So when you put something in your body, you want to make it compatible and bioavailable to the body. And I would say that's another proprietary thing that I do. When I work on things, I'm working on understanding the DNA of a bean, a coffee bean, and understanding our DNA, and then understanding how they would work copacetically together. Another thing that was really close to me that I actually have not talked about in any interview is the fact that with coffee and coffee enemas and different things that people have, there's like a 70% increase right now in colon cancer. I mean, it's horrible. And I would credit that to the environment and to all the things we're being exposed to. And even vegans are getting colon cancer, even younger people. You can look it up. It was in the New York Post, Washington, NIH, everything else. So I wanted a coffee that if doctors decided, functional med doctors or doctors in other countries wanted to help with this area, they could use it as a colon cleanse as well. Again, I have not talked about that anywhere, but for me, it was essential because as a person that's had so many different types of cancer, I want to put things in my body that will help my body. And what's interesting about what I do for a living now, I used to work in pharmaceutical and biotech, and we could say, like, we don't cure bronchitis, but here's Zithromax to help with bronchitis, and it does, right? From my perspective now, giving people things that make their body well, that make them achieve the greatest thing they can that day, which is to be their best self, is so important. And if those things that we give them can also improve the cellular health of their body by making the healthy cells healthier and making the cancerous or the sick cells not even want to be there, then that is a goal. And there's been all kinds of studies, there's been all kinds of information which shows that could be possible. But again, the problem is in theory, yes, that can help people in different areas of health. But in reality, I don't feel like it has, because I think the coffee beans and coffee has been exposed to so many things in our environment that then sometimes we're putting more toxins into our body. So that was really a major focus for me when I worked on the coffee. And I'm kind of weird. I don't talk about stuff when I decide what I'm going to do, how important it is to me, because then people are like, well, that's a lot to worry about when you're making coffee. And it is, but you know what? It isn't either, because we drink coffee every day and we deserve to have really good coffee. And I'm not saying that Rahm Roast is the best coffee in the world. That would be like me making spaghetti and saying my spaghetti is the best spaghetti in the world. But I will tell you that I've traveled to 89 countries and I've studied this for years. And this has been a topic of mine since I was in my 20s that has been important to me. And then I have a son, my oldest son, who my mom used to give him the coffee with the sugar and the cream, and he would just keep drinking it. And I would get in an argument with my mom about, why are you giving my son coffee? Now he's bouncing off the walls. He just loves it. And so he kind of put fire under my feet on it. I was like, Duquesne, I'm too busy working on all these other projects. And he was like, Mom, you have to make good coffee. Like, you have to do something about the coffee, because some people drink 4 or 5 glasses a day. And so it needs to be healthy for you. It's just like water. If you're going to drink water, I know you're like me, you want to drink healthy water, and water is part of the process when I make the coffee too. It's a specific type of water that helps clean the beans. And it's interesting, I tried to do it in the United States. I went to all different kinds of places. I could not find a master coffee maker that could do what I wanted, and I found one in Cyprus. And so I was in Cyprus and introduced to an award-winning coffee grinder, coffee maker. I mean, he's won awards all over, that understood my process, understood how to do it. Everyone else was like, "What do you mean? Why does this even matter?" Like, and now, and then after he tasted it, after it went through the process, he was like, "This is amazing. Like, this is the best coffee ever." And again, it makes sense. Like, when we're healthy, we look better, right? When coffee beans are healthier, they taste better. I mean, they're better. It's just kind of simple, and I love it. I think it's magical how science works and how all of our DNA is connected. You know, we're connected to a leaf on a tree. We're all so connected, and being able to bring coffee to the world that's going to help people, I think, is probably one of the things I've enjoyed the most in the last 3 to 4 years of my life. So I looked at the genetics of the plants and of the seeds, and then I made sure the environment was a really good environment to raise, a healthy environment to raise these amazing coffee beans. And then we just cleaned them and made them even more beautiful so that everyone could taste how amazing they are. The coffee was made and sourced from a single source in a place that was the perfect environment that we could find. We looked everywhere. And then,
So obviously you have a huge scientific background. A lot of people that are watching this are into the flavor. They're into the food, the spirits, the wine, the coffee based on flavor. And I'm sure you can understand how science can intimidate so many of us because of that.
yeah,
Is there just a really simplistic way to explain
yeah.
what's so good for the body and the planet about rum roast?
Yeah, I think it's like going to an organic farm up in the mountains where everything's perfect and tasting a bite of a watermelon and it just tastes so great, or of a berry, you know, of strawberries. When you go to these places on these islands that have never been exposed to GMOs and pesticides, and you're like, why does this taste better? Like, why is, or let me use another example. Sometimes in the United States, you'll buy a rose for someone and it doesn't even smell like a rose. But then you'll go to like a tropical island where they don't use GMOs or pesticides and it smells so beautiful. Like, this is the most beautiful rose. It smells so amazing. The coffee was made and sourced from a single source in a place that was the perfect environment that we could find. We looked everywhere. And then the process that was made was basically cleaning it until it was beautiful and perfect. It's like you brush your teeth, you take a bath, you look better. If you don't shave or brush your teeth or take a bath for 2 years, then you may not look the same as you look today. And I may not either. This coffee has been cleaned in a very holistic way, organic way, using only natural. I didn't use anything synthetic. And it tastes amazing. It tastes almost like chocolate. It's very smooth, but it's just coffee. And using zeolites used to line the ducts of the Aztec and Incas and Mayas and the pyramids. I mean, it's documented throughout history. And all I did was take a process and make sure it was cleaning so that it would look beautiful. And again, I take everything back to, I do think it's simple. I think it's simple. I sourced it from the most amazing place that had not been exposed to pesticides and GMOs, that was fair trade, that everything was a sole source farmer that we knew everything about and knew everything about the history, because I want your audience to also know this. It's not just the beans and the plants, it's the parent plants and the genetics behind it. You know, when you see racehorses, I'm sure you know this, they breed, right? The racehorses, like if you have you pay a lot of money if you have a winner from the Kentucky Derby, right? Because it's genetics. There's a genetic component, and there's always this debate about genetics and the environment, right? Which one's important? And so to me, both are important. So I looked at the genetics of the plants and of the seeds, and then I made sure the environment was a really good environment to raise, a healthy environment to raise these amazing coffee beans. And then we just cleaned them and made them even more beautiful so that everyone could taste how amazing they are. It's like the most amazing blackberry or blueberry. We haven't been able to source that yet. I source the grains I make the same way. But anyway, that's what I would say. It's very simple. It's just making sure that
Good.
everything is in order and as perfect as it can be. And then I always say this, nothing's exactly perfect, right? Everything is. I think as scientists, we made GMOs to try to make plants bigger, better, right? That failed. So as a scientist, I went back to school. I went to Harvard and studied nanobiotechnology for a very different reason than most people think. I studied to see how we could reverse things naturally from things that we've put into our world that weren't natural that have hurt us. That's why I went back to school.
And I love the direction that you're moving in, both as a scientist, a doctor, as well as from a corporate point of view. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to pursue the social responsibility of the company and how that came about for you?
So I, in my career, I worked for the government. I've worked for a lot of the top pharmaceutical and biotech companies. I moved up in those companies, and then I opened my own companies in healthcare, looking at quality and cost of care throughout the United States and putting in to practice diagnostics and analytics and genetic testing. And that was a huge thing for me. And I would say I failed at that in many ways because I put so much of my own personal money into something that the world wasn't really ready for, because at that moment the world was ready. We're built on a system of economy. Our economy depends on spending a lot of money on healthcare, right? So that it was a hard time for me, but I never gave up. So from my perspective, since I had cancer, since I had Lyme's disease, since I had a child that had cancer, I've devoted my life to trying to do the right thing. And the way I've looked at this is I have an opportunity to be alive for a reason. It was a blessing, even though I didn't feel like it was a blessing when I was, 25 and 26 and sick. And it doesn't feel like a blessing every time something else happens. But in my mind, it was, because it gave me the humility to I had the strength. I kind of have a warrior strength of fighting anything. I think like if someone came in this room and there were 100 people here, I'd probably be the one to step forward and say, "I've got this. Let me be the person that protects everyone." So I kind of was born that way. That's just how I've always been. But I think the humility of being sick and my children going through things with them caused me to be this person that knew that I could stand up and be a good example as a human being. And I always say this, we've just got to be better humans, right? And I think God, honestly, I think He humbled me for a reason. And so I take that with me. I believe in educating people and being honest. I try to do it strategically. I do understand the environment we're living in. But my goal is to make every person have the longest, best life possible. And that means mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And as a scientist, I feel like it's on my shoulders and my responsibility to tell the truth and to do it in a positive way instead of being a whistleblower, blowing things up. I want to offer these things that can help people, and that's a lot of pressure for me because it means that I'm accountable daily to try to do the right thing and to say the right thing and to not mislead in any way. And socially, I've taken that on. So most people don't know this about me, but I was on social media before only because of my children, to watch them, to make sure that they weren't doing anything wrong. And then about probably 8, 9 years ago, I started really stepping up and talking about social issues, working on even female empowerment. And I always say this, I have 3 sons and a daughter. I'm not against men. I love men. I love women too. I just always try to talk about how we can empower, because I do have this belief that when you have gifts, if you have influence, if you have money, if you have power, your job is to protect those weaker than you or that need help. And somehow we've lost that in our, I guess, our move for success, right? We think we forget about that. But for me, that's my motive to make social change, is to, it's my responsibility to be a good human. I'm going to die someday and I'm going to have to answer for everything I've done on this earth. So I have to try every day to be better. I fail every single day, but I try my best. And I feel like the coffee was something that was for a social change that I think we need to be aware of without scaring everyone. You don't want everyone thinking, well, every bit of coffee, they drink isn't good. I love Starbucks. Like my kids tease me all the time. They're like, "Mom, you love Starbucks." I love Rom Roast better, but when I'm traveling, Rom Roast isn't everywhere, and I still love Starbucks. And so I don't live a perfect life, and what I mean by that is I don't constantly put everything perfect in my body, but I try to, and I think every human being should try. And so that has led me to move to run companies. I have 22 companies actually under DRC Ventures, and a lot of people don't know that. So there's 22 companies that I'm actually in charge of right now, trying to make some good social changes in the world.
I think your message is optimistic and inspiring. I think how you're sharing it's amazing. Dr. Christina Rahm, Rahm Roast Coffee. If we want to learn more about the coffee, if we want to follow you, if we want to buy your coffee, where are the best ways to be looking for you? Social media, websites, where should we be looking?
So drchristinarom.com is my website, and then I'm on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn under Dr. Christina Rahm. But the Root Brands sells Rahm Roast, and then there's a Rahm Roast website, and I think it's romroast.com. The rootbrands.com is the other one, but the Root Brands is an affiliate model, and so basically that company gives away 50% of everything that they sell. And we also donate, just so everyone knows, we donate from every bag of coffee to philanthropy as well. But there is a new site where I know they're doing a standalone. You can buy Rom Roast on its own without doing anything else, and even at wholesale. So if people are interested in putting it into stores, they could contact me, or they could contact under romroast.com, and we would be able to facilitate that as well. So there's a huge discount when people do buy at wholesale. And we did that because of grocery stores and restaurants and things like that.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I think everyone who's listening and watching, we love coffee to begin with. And so finding out healthier ways to do it is really inspiring, and your message is inspiring.